Alrighty, hello everyone. So, as mentioned, I'm Marion Leary. I am the Director of Innovation at the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing. And in that role, I get to do a lot of really cool things. I run a lot of programs, I teach, I do research, and I also try and promote the use of innovation in health and healthcare, specifically by nurses. And, you know, I wasn't here this morning, so I apologize, but I want to define what we mean by innovation, because innovation is this sort of nebulous term that means many different things to many different people. And so at Penn Nursing, we define innovation as the creation of something new or the application of something used in a different way that delivers value. And so please don't boo me off the stage, but innovation and technology to us is not synonymous. So a technology or a widget could be an innovation, but it's not always an innovation. And really, innovation to us is the methodology you use to solve problems. It's the systems and processes you create, and it's the way that we communicate with our patients, our students, and really the community at large. All of those things can be innovation. And it really, I will say, over the past 5 years, my mindset around innovation has shifted. And really thinking more about the process you use to create a new solution and less about the end product. And so we use a variety of different innovation methodologies to help solve problems in health and healthcare, human-centered design, equity-centered design, and design thinking, all of which have empathy as their foundation. And so as we're talking up here with my colleagues today, I just wanted to sort of set the stage on what we mean by those different terms. So I want to share how I know both of these people on the stage, and then I'll let them introduce themselves. So before I was the Director of Innovation, I was a resuscitation science researcher for about 15 years, and I was trying to improve how lay responders and healthcare providers responded to sudden cardiac arrest, both in the hospital setting, but also out in the community. And over the course of that time, I really started looking at how we could use technology to improve training and education in that space, specifically around CPR. And that's how I met Jesse. I started thinking about using virtual reality and augmented reality for training of lay responders. And Jesse will get into his background in a second, but he works for a company called BrickSimple, and we work together to create these different technologies. And so as a resuscitation science researcher, I would take these technologies, specifically the virtual reality technology, out into the community and do research. So I would take this full immersive virtual reality headset. I'd take it out to a library or a place of business, and I'd walk up to somebody and I'd say, do you want to participate in a research study using virtual reality? We're going to put you in this headset, and you're going to respond however you would to some type of situation out in the real environment. We wouldn't tell them what was going to happen. And with the help of Jesse and his team, we created this cityscape that had all the sights and sounds of a real city. The person would put the headset on, they'd walk around in this city environment, and all of a sudden somebody would collapse and have a sudden cardiac arrest. We wanted to make it fully immersive, so even though the participant couldn't see the real environment, when they bent down to check to see if the simulated victim was okay, we had placed a mannequin there so they would get that tactile response also. As a researcher, this was fascinating. I got so much information from that research study, but as an innovation methodologist and somebody focused now on human-centered design, it was awful. I cannot tell you how many of our participants were so freaked out by that study. And it had never once occurred to me to ask them what they wanted in a CPR training, if they wanted to get into an immersive virtual reality space and be shocked into learning how to do CPR. So fast forward, I don't know, 5 years, and I'm at Penn Nursing as their Director of Innovation, and I teach a course called Innovation in Health, which is a foundations of human-centered and equity-centered design, where we teach students and clinicians how to solve problems in healthcare using those methodologies. And Brooke was a student in my class when she was going through her doctoral program, and her team were learning how to use this methodology. And they were looking at how to solve a problem of elopement in kids with autism. And they did, in fact, create a technology that would help to solve for that problem. And so I say all this to say, I came full circle in my view of technology and how we can use empathy, specifically, again, human-centered and equity-centered design, to really understand what our end users' wants, needs, and desires are when we're creating solutions that they really, truly need. So as healthcare providers, researchers, designers, we're not going out and telling people what it is we think they need and what the solutions are, but really allowing them to tell us and show us what they need so we can co-collaboratively design together. And so, with that, I want to have Brooke and Jesse introduce themselves. We'll start with Brooke. Talk about the work that you do now and how you use what you learned about innovation and human-centered design in that work.
Thanks, Marion, and it's an honor to be here. So my name is Brooke Goodspeed, and I'm a nurse researcher at the Jefferson Center for Autism and Neurodiversity. And I also founder and executive director of a nonprofit, GETincluded. We run the Get Cafe in Narberth, Pennsylvania, which is about 15 minutes from here. Our mission is for inclusive social inclusion for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and other neurodivergent conditions. And I'm very privileged to say we use design thinking on the daily in my work in the cafe. We program across the spectrum of needs and supports from all different types of disabilities and unique challenges in cognition. And we support those across these needs in ways to help them access one of the most important social determinants, which is employment and social participation in their communities. So we really engage the community and all stakeholders, including our customers, most importantly, to say how we can approach employment in ways that is successful, that we capitalize on what so many of us take for granted, which is lifelong learning. And our employment happens integrated with the community, not in a facility. We do on-the-spot teaching and really use low-tech to high-tech innovations to help people who have splintered skills and really meet the needs of their individual needs and also those of our customers and community members. So, thank you.
My name is Jesse Berdinka. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at BrickSimple. I was never supposed to be in tech at all. I'm a Luddite. I'm a very analog person. If something has to be done in tech, it really, really has to impress me. 90% of the time, I'm like, this is not a good idea. You could do this so much easier with Legos or whatever it is. I got my start in comic books. I was a writer and editor at Marvel for years, and then I switched over to the motion picture industry where I worked for Disney and Miramax. My background has always been in storytelling, how people tell stories, how they relate their ideas to one another. And so tech was not a natural fit for me. I moved back here to Pennsylvania from Los Angeles with my family. We were to be closer to my family. And Ded Anson, who was the head of BrickSimple, said, we're starting to do some more stuff in virtual and augmented reality. I think your background in filmmaking might help with that. And it did. I think that I was under the impression when I started working in tech that most of the time what would happen is a client would come to us and say, I want to do this, or I want to do this. And I would have to be like, whoa, 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 that's a little Buck Rogers-y. That's, I know you've been watching C-SPAN and saw some cool thing, but like we can't do that yet. It's actually the opposite. Tech is never, ever the hurdle. I've never seen a client in 8 years come to me and say, I want to do something. Like, we can't do that yet. The hurdle is always two things: ego and imagination. The imagination to come up with something that is really, truly centric around the person you're trying to help, and the ego to put yours aside to serve the person that you're trying to do. It's very weird because what we're talking about here are two opposing things. Because as a innovator, as an entrepreneur, you're asked to go out there and be like, my solution is the best. No one else has been able to come up with this. This is why I think I'm going to be able to succeed where no one else has. You have to have the ego and the confidence to do that. Then you have to turn around and be like, I know nothing. I have to listen to what people are telling me and be subservient to the solution that presents itself. Do you know how hard that is? That is really, really difficult. And I've seen people who can do one. I've seen people who can do the other. But those few people who can do that, who can whiplash like that and know that they have the confidence to come up with a solution, but also know that they have to listen to everything else. It's funny when you mention that CPR thing, because when we were building that, we were going out to lunch, me and a couple of the people who were working on the software team, and a person actually fell down in the street with a cardiac arrest, and his wife was there, and they were crying, and there was actually, I remember telling you this, there was a nurse and an EMT arguing over the best way to do CPR. Now, if you know anything about CPR, I think you lose, it's a 10% increase in mortality for every minute you don't do CPR. And then what we realized was, it's easy to teach CPR, the staying alive, all that stuff. The mechanics of it are easy. The managing the situation of a wife who's crying and people are gathering around and managing that is really, really difficult. And I look at that. It's funny you looked at that as a lesson, because we did too, because we were like, man, we are just not listening to what is really needed here. We think we knew what it was. That's why I love nursing too, because a lot of times when you do stuff, people will give you oh, that's feedback. Nurses have no time not to give you an honest answer. If something doesn't work, a nurse will tell you in 10 seconds, yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So yeah, it's been a fun ride. So yeah.
So I guess, Jesse, we'll stick with you, because how has your view of the empathy process and exactly what you said, as the developer, and the researcher or designer, putting your assumptions and biases aside and letting the end user drive the process, how has that changed for you over the years? Because in my role as the director of innovation, I run a program through Johnson & Johnson called the Nurse Innovation Fellowship Program, and it's for chief nursing officers of hospitals and health systems from around the country. And if you know anything about chief nursing officers, they're very highly driven individuals who have to know what the problem is and solution is and drive the solution forward. To Jesse's point, that's not how this process works. And so when I work with these highly driven people, it is really hard to get them to step back and do what Jesse was saying, to, again, let their own assumptions, biases, and ideas go and listen to whoever the end users are. As somebody who came from the film industry and has been working in this space for so long, how has your view of that changed, and how you sort of, one, address it yourself, but two, help clients to take that standpoint?
I think it's hard, because I think that part of that is built into your personality. Everybody here can work on their listening skills. I know that I've struggled with it over the years. I try to work with it. You have to be open. And there are some people who are open to it and some people who are not. But that also goes to the people you're listening to. You have to remember that the people you're listening to, it's not a pure, unadulterated, point of view either. They're coming to it from their own biases. A perfect example of that is when I worked in the film industry, we used to do focus groups where we would show the movie to people and they would give us, this. Half the time, somebody would give you an insight that was so amazing, you're wondering, I just spent $20 million on this film. How in the world am I so stupid that I did not see that point that person just brought up. That person is a genius. The next instant, somebody would bring up something, you're like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't know how that person is walking and breathing at the same time, like this. And I say that because when you're listening to people, you can't just listen to them and say, okay, well, that's what we have to do because they're saying it. You have to understand, where is that coming from, okay? If they're saying, hey, we need this or we need this, why are they saying that? What's their worldview? What's their background? Why are they coming to this problem that way? So you're looking at not individuals, but you're looking at also their backgrounds. And I think you also have to look at, in mass, is this something that is consistently coming up when I show this to people? And am I being like, okay, well, they're all saying that, but they're just not getting it. I hear that all the time. Like, yeah, well, once it's out and they see it, they'll get it. No, they will not. They're telling you it's not working. They're telling you this is not the right direction. They're telling you that they need this, that, or the other thing because that's what it is. They may not have the words to articulate it, but that is a red flag that you have to listen to when people are trying to tell you about it. And I think over time, I've just developed, my gut has gotten better at okay, there's something not going on here. Like there's something we're not addressing. I think just as you get older, you just, if you do enough of these things, you just start to listen to it. So I would say that if you're an innovator and you're starting to look at these things and you're starting to, you have an idea, is start to look for patterns in what people are telling you. Not just what one person's telling you, but what are numerous people. Show it to a lot of people. Don't just show it to the people who are gonna, my mom is gonna like it. You know what I mean? It's like, my wife is never gonna tell me it's bad. You know what I mean? So I wanna show it to people who I know are really going to give me honest opinions about things. I think that's how it's changed over time.
Yeah, totally. And when you're doing that, think about like extremes and mainstreams, to Jesse's point. Show it to the people who are really going to be engaged with it, but also show it to people who are going to give you honest feedback who might not agree with you, because you need those viewpoints too in order to make a solution that's going to meet everyone's needs. So, Brooke, you mentioned in your intro that you're still using the methodology and the things you learned in class in the work that you're doing. How did your mindset shift from learning about the empathy phase and the human-centered design process after the class and after the work you did with your autism solution, and how do you incorporate that now into Get Cafe? Because I will say, if anybody hasn't been to Narberth and to Get Cafe, it is an incredible space that Brooke has created, so I highly recommend checking them out. And I was able to go there last month to visit and really saw the incredible innovative work that Brooke is doing there with the folks who work there. And so if you can talk a little bit more about how you're incorporating some of that.
Sure. Well, one thing we're doing is really listening to end users. And I think that when we're testing any accommodation, it's momentary, like just get something on paper, even if it's a Post-it note for right now and to label quarters in the drawer, or a script for at the register. We're not waiting and spending time, finding an app to develop. It's quick prototyping has been key. Getting real feedback and then listening, I think, is another key strategy. It's hard and challenging to find solutions that work for everybody. If you program for some of the highest support needs that often will help everyone, we might tweak it. But I think one thing we're learning and what we've done at the cafe is really, I view it as a living lab. And it's an opportunity for some of our graduate students in the audience, having speech therapy students, occupational therapy students, nursing professionals, and other allied health services and teachers come in, and they're the true domain experts. And as a caregiver by nature, and I should add that I'm also a parent of a 14-year-old high support need, lovely son with autism and Down syndrome, and being that part of that community. of silent caregivers, quite honestly, who are just drowning and need support and need someone to listen to their voice. I, from my own heart center, wanted to create a space where those voices could be heard and that we could find solutions across the board that weren't just for the individual, but really their family and what happens over the course of the lifetime. What do you do when you retire, and how can you be engaged in your community? And really, we recognize that because we have students and we also have retirees, and we integrate everyone together because the green student who's learning like the newest methodology or the latest research, has a wealth of information to offer, as does the retired speech therapist with 40 years of clinical expertise who can really say, one time I had a patient that was like this and we tried this and it worked. So it's listening and being open to new and old and evolving ways of solving problems, and then gauging right there in the moment, like, is this working? Is this feasible and acceptable? And how do we incorporate all of these different factors to grow as an organization and serve our customer base, serve good coffee with a side of empathy. And I think that's been our key to success.
So on the last panel, Dr. Demiris mentioned that sometimes technologies can add significant burden even when they're being developed to help. So I think, Brooke, we'll start with you. Have you seen technologies in the space of autism or in the other spaces where you work where that has been an issue? And are there ways that you think those issues could have been lessened?
Yes, there have been issues. My work, I'm very fortunate to be the PI on a Special Olympics grant. We're testing an app for communication for people with IDD for their healthcare providers. And that process is very slow. And it's important to be diligent and to have things that are integrated into the literature and evidence. I believe strongly in that, which is why we're doing evidence-based research at the cafe through my work at Jefferson to find the solutions that are grounded in theory and practice and methodology. However, as a parent and considering my other two children will have to take care of my child, my third child, how do we do that? We need to be moving things faster than the evidence moves. I always say, I can't wait 10 years for the app to develop. I really can't. But I can move the process along on the ground while grounding it in evidence. So we're playing, long game. We always say, we're building the evidence, and in 10 years, we'll have the manual of how to do this. But in the meantime, we're going to effectively ripple out our impact on the ground to the populations that need it most, and support, healthy living and across the lifespan and across different conditions and needs. So.
Yeah, and I think that highlights really well the tension between research and innovation, because we need both, but research doesn't always move quickly enough, and so you really do need to have the rigorous methodological innovation approach as well. So Jesse, same question, the things that you've seen fail, what could have been done to prevent that in the tech space? And how could we do it better?
They fail because they didn't ask themselves one question. Why in the hell am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this thing that's right in front of me? I am, and you're probably not going to want to hear this, I am probably the world's biggest pessimist. My wife tells me all the time, you are a pessimist, you don't believe in anything is going to work out. And I think that is my superpower because honestly, if you can get past me and I think it's a good idea, I think it's a good idea. So I will tell clients all the time, they will come and they'll be super excited. They'll be like, why should we do this? We want to do this and this and this. I'm like, why are you doing this? Who is this for? Who's getting value out of this? Who's paying for it? That's a big question that we get a lot of times and stuff too. You can make a checklist. And, so I see that being, for me, that's the big thing is, why are you doing this? Who does this serve? Who is this helping, other than yourself? You know what I mean? And, I've noticed that the ones that really get through that are usually in one of two camps. It's somebody who has taken something that we've all taken for granted and flipped it on its head. We were recently doing an application for mothers that were in the hospital about to give birth, who were at high risk. And one of the things that they did was they took a sensor, a very simple, cheap sensor, and they incorporated it. And it was a motion sensor, but what they realized is that certain motions in the human body could predict whether or not a woman was at high risk of it. It was something that we had never seen before. It was super cheap, super easy to implement, had immediate ramifications, and we were like, yeah, I'm like, that, boom, that's it. So I think where I see where things where they really break through is where someone really innovatively thinks about something that we've all taken for granted, or that we all just, and they flip it on their head, or something where somebody has serviced a segment of the audience or the users that everyone else has just put into the side and has said, there's no money in that. The minute someone tells me there's no money in it, that's the first thing I want to do, is because I know that there's probably a solution there that no one has looked at. You know what I mean? That's something I want to do. That doesn't mean that might be successful. I know it'll be useful. And so those are the two things where I look at it. I'm instantly engaged when somebody tells me, or tells me I can't do something. The minute somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm all about I got to find a way to do that. So those for me are the challenges.
So I think we only have 3 minutes left, but does anybody have any questions? I mean, I could ask questions forever, but does anybody in the audience have questions for our panelists? So I'll repeat the question for those in the back. How do you improve the probability of success and surround yourself with the people who are going to give you the feedback you need?
Okay, can I take that?
Yeah.
Involve all your stakeholders as early as possible. If you are in academia and you come up with an idea, get business affairs, get your legal people, get IT, everybody who you need to get them involved early, because what happens is you come up with a great idea, you get your team together, you build it, and then you forgot to tell business affairs, you forgot to tell IT, and then suddenly you've now brought in an important stakeholder really late in the game. They do not like that. So whatever your team is, whoever your people are, get them all involved early and get them all on the same page. To me, out of all the things I've seen, the hundreds of projects, the way they fail is because they did not involve all the stakeholders early in the game.
And I'll also say, as an educator and an innovation methodologist, use the methodology and trust the process. The process works if you work it. And so not taking shortcuts, not letting your, you as the researcher or, again, clinician designer decide, but really following the human-centered, equity-centered design process to let your end users drive what you're doing, and then trust that you will get to the right solution.
I would just add to embrace failure. That's a natural part of the process, humility, and be available to pivot at any moment, and open to pivoting. So some of the most extraordinary things come out of doing something wrong over and over and over again. Yes.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me in this conversation, and thank you all for having us at EmpathyTech. Love this. Thank you.